And we are live. JT here. Welcome to The Huddle. The Huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's to learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I want to take a moment to thank you. Whether you are tuning in live as we stream into Facebook, whether you are watching the replay on YouTube or on Facebook, or whether you're listening to audio on the podcast, thank you so much for being here with me and my special guest today. And here's my reminder to you. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's wide open. So my challenge to you is to go all in on this conversation, to remove any distractions and get laser focus in the here and the now. And I guarantee you will gain a valuable nugget of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. I've been looking forward to my conversation with my special guest today. We've had some great conversations and I've really just enjoyed being around his presence, his cool, calm demeanor, as I always like to share with him. My guest in the huddle today is the offensive coordinator at Laurier University. He's also in charge and passionate about student athlete development, and he is also part of our U18 Team Ontario men's tackle staff. My guest in the huddle today is Todd Galloway. How are you today, brother?
I'm doing well, and I appreciate you for having me on. Looking forward to the conversation.
Definitely. So brother, one of the things that I like to remind myself is the importance of counting your blessings. And for me, it's a daily practice. Some days I do it better than others, but I do find that when I count my blessings, it's usually turns out to be a good day. And I'm a firm believer that the biggest blessing you can give someone is your time and energy. So thank you so much for giving me and our community some of your time and energy today. Appreciate it, Todd.
Yeah. No, I say it's reciprocated. I'm really excited to be here.
Okay. So one of the reminders that I like to give myself and others is that life is a game and games are supposed to be fun. So I'm curious, what's an interesting fact about you? You know, I had a coaching colleague, a great friend that said, you know, we all have our quirks. We all have these things that make us unique and different. So just celebrate it. So I'm curious, and what is an interesting fact about you that maybe a lot of people don't know about, but you'd be open to sharing with our community?
Okay. Well, I guess interesting fact. I played receiver at Wilfrid Laurier. So Laurier is my alma mater. But what a lot of people don't know is I probably dislocated my shoulder about 22 times, and so I managed to have to get it surgically repaired a couple of those times to try to continue on with my career. And so the joke around when I was kind of a player and even after is I would bend over to tie my shoes and my arm would fall out of its socket. And so it's something that I now kind of use as injury prevention and make sure you take care of yourself, because you don't want to wind up down the pathway that I kind of ended up.
And it's interesting, and I appreciate you sharing, right? And again, you shared some of, you know, your lived experience, you know, facing, you know, injuries and recovery. And it's interesting how, you know, I know before we were talking about the importance of like over preparing, right? And it's interesting how that has sort of framed the way you approach, you know, coaching today.
Yeah, no, and I think it is. And I always talk about, like, I dealt with injuries through my playing career. I've always talked about, I wasn't the best football player. I wasn't everything. So I always felt like I had to do more. I always had to put a little bit of extra effort in. I always had to know the playbook a little bit more than everybody else and know everybody's job on the field, just to get myself to a point where I was contributing on game day. And then kind of through that, needed to have a better understanding, needed to work a little harder, needed to do all this. Kind of drove, along with some great mentors in my life, my passion for coaching and wanting to stay with the game after.
Okay. So I'm curious, you mentioned you've had a wealth of experience, right? First, you were a high quality athlete, and then you transitioned to become a high quality coach. So it's obviously very evident that sport has played an important role for you in your life. I'm curious, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you have taken from sport? I know there's many, but that you find that you still constantly apply to your life today in all areas.
I mean, football is specific, and not to be too cliche with it, but like football teaches so many life lessons. And that's kind of why I played hockey growing up, played baseball, did track, did a bunch of other sports growing up. But I'd say the reason football stuck with me the most is just the life lessons that it taught of not being able to accomplish things without a support system, without your teammates, without structure, without discipline. It really did kind of show me that, while an individual sport can achieve individual greatness, collective team sports just come with a totally different sense of success when you not only get to appreciate the success that you achieved, but watch all of the success collectively that everybody else gets to experience with it. Is kind of what's really stuck with me now as a coach. Like, one of my greatest things that make me happy is watching light bulbs go off, watching kids get it, watching them achieve success is one of the things that excites me most still today.
I love that, right? And hearing you share is that idea of, this collective successes, right? Working towards a common purpose. And you mentioned that, what really brings you joy is this idea when you see the light bulb go on, right? When you see the proverbial aha, like, oh my goodness, I get it. I'm curious, like, what is it about that, and again, it resonates with me coming from background education. What is it about that like really drives you, to continue to help and serve these young people?
Yeah, and I guess I'm passionate about, mentoring people. I'm passionate about teaching, and it's just a slightly different style of teaching than the classroom, right? We are, and I kind of take that seriously, that we're not just coaching football. We're not just trying to teach them a specific skill that makes them great on the field. I really believe that we're trying to prepare them to be future leaders and future fathers or parents, and kind of make sure that when they leave, they're ready to go on and be successful in the real world at whatever it is that they choose to do, right? And I take, over the years, I've had seasons that are really, really good, and I've had seasons where we've struggled a little bit. The one thing that's always maintained that equal level of enjoyment every single year through that is not necessarily just the wins or losses. It's seeing guys go on to be successful, and then watching them a few years later want to come back with, their family and see what they're now doing and the success that they're having is one of the biggest joys that I get to have as a coach.
It sounds like, again, leaving others with the impression of increase, right? It's that cliche of like, leave people, leave the room, leave whatever. When you're done with it, leave it slightly better than before you got there.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, was there a particular coach or mentor that helped you to understand that idea, or was that just something that you've naturally kind of discovered for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. I've had a lot of great coaches that I've been able to be a fly on the wall with, that I've been kind of intimately involved with, but I'd have to probably go back to one of my first. And so in the latter part of my playing days, Coach Gary Jeffries is somebody that I was very fortunate enough to be a player under in my later playing days when he became the head coach. And then Coach Jeffries is actually the one who gave me my first coaching job as well. And so I graduated football in my playing career actually in 2003. And he offered for me to come on and be the receivers coach that very next year in 2004. And so I got into coaching pretty quickly. But just to see the environment that he fostered, and you kind of hear the term almost that, Coach Jeff has like a coaching tree in the OUA and a coaching tree in U Sport. And I think it's the way that he fostered relationships and the way that he did it in a way that came with the one team was kind of his motto. And he showed up with his heart first, right? He came in and it wasn't like, this is the way we're going to do it and you're going to conform to it, or there's the door. It's I'm going to love you and I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to try to build that trust and try to earn it back in from the player. And so that's just kind of the approach that I grew in and I learned it. And it's something that I kind of try to do. And it kind of gives me also, as a sidebar, great joy that like I learned that at Laurier, and now I'm trying to kind of embody that and kind of keep that tradition a little bit in my time here at Laurier as well.
I love what you shared. It reminded me of a conversation that I had with Coach Kevin McNeil, and it was interesting how he described Coach Jeffries was similar, right? Like he really got to know the person first, was really focused on helping and serving the person before, the student athlete, before anything else. And it's interesting how such fond memories, and now, I see how close you and Coach McNeil are, and just how, again, now you are sort of empowering these lessons into the next generation of student athletes at the U Sport level, which is really cool.
Yeah. And Kevin and I actually, we played together.
Yeah.
We kind of grew up in the coaching tree together. We both started as young coaches at Laurier together. Coach Jeff gave us both an opportunity. And to kind of speak volumes of Coach Jeff's generosity. I was a young coach who was doing a master's degree at McMaster in Hamilton. But he let me sleep on a mattress on his floor in his living room for 2 years while I was a part-time coach, right? And so he took anybody in that needed, made sure that people were looked after. It was a lot more than just football for him. It was similar. It was mentoring young people to go on and be successful.
So I'm curious again. I think what's unique about your journey is your alum, right? Like you are coaching now at your alma mater. So again, there's this sort of this idea of like celebrate your past, right? Like it's obviously you speak very fondly of your experience there as a student athlete, and now you have an opportunity to be part of creating the change of what it looks like moving forward.
Right.
What has that process been like for you to come back, again, as a slightly more experienced, more lived, more wisdom at this stage of your life as a coach?
Yeah, and it's interesting, and it's kind of come up a lot more in the last couple of years. But it's when I left, I didn't know at the time if I'd ever be back, right? And so played for 4 years, coached for 3 years as a young coach, kind of fly on the wall, gaining some experience. And then when I left, I didn't know if I would come back. But kind of as I started to evolve my coaching career and got my first full-time job in 2011, I was always happy where I was, and I wanted to develop and do the best job where I was. But this thought in the back of my mind would sometimes creep in that, going back to my alma mater one day to kind of give back to the program that gave so much to me would be really awesome. And then as, it wasn't really until the opportunity kind of met experience and Coach Faulds and I connected when this opportunity was up, I kind of really had to look at myself and say, is this the right time? And it's one thing to take a next stage in your coaching career or anything like that. But I actually really had to think to myself that, yes, it was in the back of my mind that I wanted to go coach at my alma mater one day, but I want to make sure that I do my alma mater justice. I want to make sure that I'm an experienced enough coach, and I'm a successful enough coach, and that I'm going to do the job that I think my alma mater deserves. And so, it was kind of fortunate that, coaching experience met opportunity at this point, and I thought it was a good time when this opportunity came up to apply for this position that was created. And fortunately, I was the candidate that was successful.
It's interesting as you share, and what it reminded me of is this idea where, we've been led to believe that the path to success is linear, right? That's always this trajectory that just always goes up, and you're always in flow. Where just listening to your journey, it's realizing that you were blessed with this opportunity right when you were done playing to coach at your alma mater for 3 years, and then you went on to new and different opportunities. And through those opportunities became a stronger, more powerful version of yourself. And here you are now, years later, and now you're like, okay, now you're ready to take things to the next level of not only yourself, your coaching, but the program to the next level. So I think it's a great reminder.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's I remind myself of that often. I don't take it for granted.
Yeah.
I still find it, I don't know if nostalgic is the right word. But being and sitting in the office that my former head coach Gary Jeffries was in, all right. And so
Mhm.
I try to make sure that I do that desk justice and
Yeah.
make sure that I'm doing the best job I can.
Okay. So I'm curious, before we jumped on live, we are talking about, these last 3 years have been an interesting time in human history, right? Everyone's experience has been different. For you, I know, again, you've mentioned you have a strong passion for student athlete development, helping them become, serving them well so that whatever they go on to in the business world and family, that they're a stronger, more powerful version of themselves. What has been the biggest challenge that you've observed with young people coming to you after this last 3 years that, again, has been interesting to say the least?
Yeah, and I think obviously not being able to have interpersonal connections and social skills, and I think has been one of the challenges. So we've had some of our young incoming student athletes have come from a year, 2 years of online learning environment, and then all of a sudden showing up on campus for 15,000 people and 200 or 300 person classrooms. And it's a big adjustment. Like it's a big social adjustment for them because the last couple of years through the pandemic of their high school career have been kind of isolated in their own home. And so that's been a challenge for a lot of kids, and we do what we can to help overcome that. And I think the other thing that's kind of been diminished through it is resilience and kids' ability to handle adversity, right? And so it's something now that you're back. You have to set a timetable. You have to be here at a certain time. All right. You have to make training at a certain time. You have to go to class at a certain time. Where kind of things were a little bit more online and at home and done a workout in your basement and done at your convenience. Things are getting back to a much more structured schedule. And that's obviously an adjustment over the last couple of years as well.
It's interesting as you share that, and what I heard again is like some of these interpersonal skills, quote unquote. That's why I always laugh when they call them soft skills. I'm like, at the end of the day, they're great human being skills,
Yes.
Or whether just simple skills and life skills in terms of being able to be focused with your time and energy and all these things that we almost have to, I think, go back to basics, and we have to sort of those fundamentals in order to help, our young people thrive moving forward.
No, absolutely. And so we meet with our student athletes regularly, but it's we do academic support for them. We do all kinds of things, but we've had to evolve a little bit with that as well, more than ever, with making sure that it's not just academic support we're providing them, it's mental health supports more than ever that we're providing them, and putting them in situations and making sure that they're comfortable and that they're socially interacting with their teammates, socially interacting, going to class, meeting people on campus, and trying to get back to, like we talked about before we got on, that first year student experience for those incoming freshmen. That's something that a third of a university has lost, is that first year student experience, because that hasn't been done for 2 years. Right. And I think that's a major part of socialization and meeting new people and building relationships and network connections and all of that stuff. And so it's something that we're actively talking about and encouraging and meeting with our young guys one-on-one about and making sure that they're handling that adjustment as well as possible.
So it sounds like, again, going back to like really meeting people where they're at, really treating each person as an individual, as opposed to, part of, is a big focus for you and the program right now.
It is, right. And sometimes that can be difficult. You've got a group of 100 people in the locker room. And so but it's what we are. Like, we don't have a job. We don't have a job if it's not for our student athletes. And so our job is to serve them and what they need. And in some years that's different, right? And in some years, pre-pandemic, and you have a really veteran team and everybody's in a good space, you can really focus on the X's and O's. You can really focus on the system of the offense or the defense. Right now, the focus has to be on some of them on learning how to be a university student and learning how to handle these new social interactions that they haven't had for a couple of years. And it's just every year a team is totally different, right? And so right now that different a little bit is making sure that these guys are comfortable in their space and comfortable in their own skin.
Yeah, it's a great reminder that, really at the end of the day, if you want to bring out the greatness in others, you want to bring out the best in them, they have to at the core feel happy, healthy, and well.
Yeah.
And that's utmost importance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right. And so, no, there's a lot of things that we try to do. And again, sometimes I'm a little corny in some of the approaches I take. And, even when I first got hired I'll flash up on the screen for everybody, like 7 simple rules to happiness or different things like that are kind of, just trying to teach them that, especially through this, like what other people think of you is none of your business, or, you can't hold all the weight of the world's problems. And we'll talk about these things and just kind of make sure that, we're creating an environment that they want to learn in, that they feel safe in. And it's just the approach that I think is necessary in today's world, that these young student athletes are a different generation that have been through some trauma that other generations haven't. And we have to meet them at their level.
Again, what I'm really hearing again is, are you providing, right? I think it's a good opportunity for any high quality coach to ask themselves a question to get them to reflect on their process, right? Like, are you actually providing those opportunities to learn some of these valuable life lessons, right? Are you providing the opportunities for them to practice these skills of, like you mentioned, resiliency, right? So that when it hits the fan, that they have the ability and that thick skin to realize that, no, I'm good. I'll make it through this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is post-pandemic, but I'll say in a lot of locker rooms, in a lot of situations. I remember, to kind of go back to Gary Jeffries back in, I'm trying to think, it was 2017, 2018. We had brought Gary Jeffries in to do some leadership training because he was such a mentor and such a great leader for us. And so he kind of met with our student athletes where I was at the time. And then he kind of created a report of all of their feedback and everything that they were going through. And even then, the number one thing kids said they want to get better at is learning how to handle adversity better. Right. And so that's even pre-pandemic. Right. And so the number one glaring thing that came through was that these young men wanted to handle adversity better and be able to take it face on and be able to do that. And so that was kind of not a turning point, but not an eye opener almost, that, okay, there needs to be more than just handling adversity isn't calling a better play than the other side of the ball is calling, against you. Handling adversity is teaching them that things aren't always going to be perfect, right? How do we take things head on and with the best of our ability and not let them affect us, to the point where it affects our ability to be successful.
I love that. And just in the fact of, you brought in, Coach Jeffries, who again has played an integral part in the program, but then also being open to hearing feedback from, the student athletes of what they actually wanted, what they felt they needed. So I think that's awesome. And kudos to you and the other coaches for being open to see that. So I'm curious, what does that look like now? Obviously we're getting quote unquote back to normal. How has that insight into wanting to become more resilient? How has that been embedded into how you go about business on a daily basis?
Yeah. And so one of the things that happened, and I'll look at exclusively here with us at Laurier, is when we kind of started the pandemic, we kind of took a look at ourselves as coaching staff and said that this is going to have an effect on our football team. And so we used it as an opportunity to kind of look at the state of the program as it was going into the pandemic, kind of what we thought we needed to do to support the players through the pandemic. And then obviously a little bit of projecting out the other side of kind of what it may or may not look like, and trying to think back, we might have been way off. But it kind of created a path where we kind of said, I think we need to define the culture of what's important of our team, right? And what was important to the team in 2018 or 2019 pre-pandemic, what's important to our team right now might be slightly different because we're staring down the face of not even knowing if we're going to have a season in 2020, right? So how do you help them handle that adversity? How do you help them, get through that? So we kind of, as a coaching staff, did a cultural exercise and kind of talked about all the different things that we think are important. And then we kind of put that out to our players as well. And we got their feedback on what they want the culture of this football team to be moving forward so that we could kind of create a set of standards, values, principles that we could kind of live by every day, that we could kind of reflect back to. And it wasn't just wins or losses, as part of your culture. It was almost more like when things aren't going well, is there some principles, some core values, some stuff that we can reflect back on to help us through just about any situation.
It's interesting because it sounds like, again, getting that clarity, like culture, right? Like what's culture, group habit, but I love the fact that you started to like what's important to us, right? Not only as coaches, but for the athletes, for the program. And then again, it was getting that clarity of intrinsically what you value beyond wins and losses. So I'm curious, how has that clarity impacted what you've been able to achieve in any area, whether it's on field, like scoreboard wise, or any, like what have you noticed as the clarity of values have become more center in the program?
Yeah, and I can't totally speak to what it was like before I got to Laurier in 2020 when I was hired. And I got hired in 2020 and kind of end of January, early February, and like 6 weeks later, the entire world got shut down. And so I will say I've been a part of some very high quality programs. And some of the clarities that I can see that are visible is transparency and honestness between coaches and staff. There's a trust there that they believe that because we involve them in some of the decision-making processes. And even throughout the year, Coach Faulds has a leadership council that he makes decisions with throughout the week, throughout the season, that there's a trust there between coaches and players, that they believe that we're doing what's in their best interest. And I think it's also brought our locker room closer together. Like I think one of the best qualities of Laurier is our guys, is our close-knit community. Our guys really, really stick together and look out for each other. Because again, and maybe I'm naive, but I think because there's a core values and core beliefs that they've bought into. And so it kind of helps clarify what the common goal is, right? And if the common goal to me, if is just wins successful, losses not successful, that can create a lot of infighting and who should be there in that path to wins and losses. But there's a lot more core values other than that that are now helping bring the group together because they're all moving in a collective direction. And obviously, we want to win championships, and that's an important part of achieving success. But when they're clear that the goal through our culture is not just that, our goal is creating good human beings, then it makes all the rest of that easier and more inclusive and more welcoming to all types of individuals.
I love what you brought up, and what I heard again was that idea of like trust. And it's interesting that one of the biggest cliches in sport is like trust the process. And why I find it so funny is like anyone can trust the process when things are going well, right? When the scoreboard is you're up by 14, when things are going, you're a 5-game winning streak and everything's all sunshines and rainbows. Yeah. But can you demonstrate that same level of trust in yourself and your teammates and in the coaches when you're down by 14, when you're 0-5, where maybe you're just facing a ton of adversity? And that's, again, so I guess my question to you is how important, again, you've been on a diversity of staffs. How important has that trust factor been in any high quality team?
It's supremely important, right? And at our level, like and I was talking with our quarterback and some of our receivers just this week, like they're adults, right? Like we deal with 18 to 24, 25-year-olds. And so they're not dumb. They're not naive, right? If there's mistrust in the coaching staff, they see it, right? And there's a trickle down effect of that. And like I said, I'm a firm believer that trust is a two-way street, but I think us as the mentors and us as the coaches, I think we have to give our trust first, right? And I think especially in today's generation of young men and women that have been through more trauma and have been through a pandemic and have been through a lot of things, are not always as open to trusting people as they get back into social interactions and stuff like that. And so it's really, really important for us to give our wholehearted trust and love them, and try to earn that trust back in return, not just demand it from people.
And I love how you're challenging that conventional wisdom, right? That, trust is earned, it's not given. Where, like you said, as a leader, as a servant-based leader, you have to be willing to give your trust, to model, to embody that behavior, right? And then by doing that, then that creates a culture, right, where you actually start to build a trusting environment, and then you're able to bring out the best and greatness in others.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And the cliche term "trust is earned, not given" comes up a lot. And I think the one thing that's missing from that statement is that that's a two-way street, right? And it's not just a one-way street, right? So from their perspective, trust is earned, not given as well, right? And so there has to be a mutual ground on that. And kind of leads me to one of the other, kind of old school cliche statements that I love, but I think is important, is like tough love. People often use a term like that. Well, the one thing that's sometimes forgotten in tough love is that they got to know you love them first in order for them to be tough love, right? And so that's just the slight change in the approach. Is I'm gonna love the heck out of them first, and make sure that they know that I trust them and I love them, and that way when I'm hard on them, they know that it's coming from a place that's in their best interest.
Yeah, it's interesting you share that, right? I love that philosophy, because it's something I do my best to live by as well, is that love tough, right? Because again, when you love people tough, those bridges of trust are built so that when you say, I have to hold you to this standard because it's going to get you to where you want to go, the other person is more receptive to actually hearing your feedback.
Absolutely, right. And that's the whole goal, right? And our goal is to try to help build up student athletes to achieve a level of success that sometimes they don't even know they're capable of. But in order to do that, there needs to be a trust and a bond there, that they're open to and being receptive to what you're trying to help teach them.
And what I love about everything you're sharing is, again, just observing, seeing what you were able to accomplish on the field. And again, I know, it's in the process, right, of getting to where you want to go. But you could start to see just how people were describing what they were seeing Laurier football was about. You could hear the narrative kind of changing, right? You could see people's almost were becoming believers in what you're helping to grow there, because, it's funny, you focus on the fundamentals, what we do intrinsically, and then the results are starting to show up on the field.
Yeah, no, and that's the hope, right? And so there's, I've been very fortunate over my coaching career to experience some decent level of success with a couple of different programs. And so, I think that comes with a little bit of credibility that the guys are starting and willing to buy in, but my approach hasn't changed at all, right? I walked in day one when I met the offense for the first time, and I said, I'm not going to ask you to memorize the playbook. I'm not going to ask you to anything. I said, all I'm going to ask you to do is give me a chance. Right, like give me a chance to earn your trust is the way that I kind of opened up. And I think in today's day and age, it's just a little bit different. I don't think coming in and trying to put myself on a pedestal or kind of create it in an authoritarian kind of way. I work very closely with my guys, and I believe that I'm on the same level as them. Right, at the end of the day, I can draw the craziest thing up on the whiteboard that I think is going to beat any defensive scheme. But if they're not comfortable with it or can't execute it, there's no point, right? So, I'm there to serve them, and we're going to work together to find the best way to beat the 12 guys across from us on the field, right? And if the idea comes from me, or the idea comes from our starting quarterback, or the idea comes, I don't care who gets the credit for it. right? Let's find a way to work together and try to be successful.
And it's interesting, like the more you share, the more like we have this conversation, I start to, again, I've been blessed to be able to watch you teach and coach, right? Especially with our Team Ontario athletes. And you can tell that or even what I watched you at the mega clinic, leading other coaches in the province, like you can see, you want to take one simple idea. This is why we do it. Like, it seems like helping people to understand this is why we do it. Here's the purpose, like, is really important to you. Is that something that, like, you just have always got, or is that something again?
Yeah, no, it's something that's grown over time, I will say. Like, when I was a young coach, I admittedly, I wasn't very good, right? Like, I thought I could out coach everybody, and I thought I could out scheme everybody. And I thought, like, and I kind of came to a realization, 2 or 3 years in to my first full-time job, that it was like, it doesn't matter what I know, right? It's not what I know, it's what the kids can do, or what they can buy into, or what they can execute at a high level. And that kind of led me to start to understand, like, I need to make sure that it's not necessarily about how smart I think I am, because that doesn't matter at all. It's about making sure that they understand why they're doing it and how it can be successful. Because I've seen in several occasions, some of the simplest schemes are the most successful because the guys understand why they're doing it. And having an understanding of why they're doing it helps them execute it at a higher level, and or how to make slight adjustments on the field when the picture is not as pretty as it looks in the playbook. Right. And so, no, we spend a lot of time on the why, right? And to the point where, in every varying levels of position, varying levels of experience within the program, we'll have a kind of a different understanding of the why. But I can't take credit for it. But I was back in, I'm trying to think what the year was, 2013, 2014. Another coach of mine that I was with, actually, Coach Marcello Campanero, who's a retired teacher and was former head coach of McMaster, came and coached quarterbacks for us for a little bit. And he kind of brought this thought process of the mastering of an offense and the different levels. And it kind of started with, just memorizing the structure of a play, right? But then, once you've memorized the structure of the play, you kind of then get to understanding the play, learning how to then put and apply that into practice, right? And so there's a 5-step mastering of an offense that we kind of go with, that kind of ends with the final step being that you understand it all so well that you can start to apply critiques and different parts to it that will allow you to kind of make adjustments that let you be successful.
It's interesting as you do that. What it really reminds me is this, like, being able to close the knowing doing gap, right? Like, you can know something, but again, do you understand it when it doesn't happen or unfold like how it was drawn up on a whiteboard or in the playbook?
Yeah.
Can you adjust? Can you face that adversity? And it's interesting that those built-in lessons on resiliency and how to become a stronger, more powerful, more calm and confident version of yourself, it's like built into everything you do on and off the field.
Yeah, no, and I did it with our quarterback room for the last couple of years since I've been there. And the feedback from that is now turned into, like, Coach, I think we need to do this with the whole offense, right? I think we need to present this concept to the whole offense so that they kind of have a roadmap to understanding the why, right? And not everybody who comes in knows how to understand a playbook, knows how to watch film, knows how to study. And so it's, again, more so than just, here's a really playbook that I think is cool and can be successful. Here's a roadmap on how to achieve success with that playbook, and how to understand the game of football.
So I'm curious, where's the focus go as we head into the off season? We're closing out, depending on when people are listening to this, watching this, we're closing out 2022, transitioning to 2023. Where's your focus, whether it's with Team Ontario, whether it's with Laurier, kind of?
And so, just finished all of our exit interviews with our players. And so one of the things that Coach Falls does a really, really good job with is we meet after the season's done with every single player one-on-one. And we get their feedback, good, bad, or otherwise. And so he kind of sets them with a set of questions that provide a little bit of structure and lets them provide feedback on everything from their experience to, even the classical, like, if you know now, what you didn't know then, is there, what are your regrets? What would you do differently? When we have this conversation after spring camp, where are you hoping to be? And even providing feedback on, the coaching they're getting, the mentorship they're getting. We welcome open and honest feedback from our players. And so we just finished that up. And so we're kind of compiling that. And that's going to help, hopefully drive some of the direction of our winter off-season practices, right? And so whether it be in our system or our coaching style or our training or anything like that, if there's any other supports that we need to provide or anything like that comes out in any of that we'll look to address any gaps in our support structure as well. But that's a big one that we just kind of finished up right now. Our guys are in the middle of exams, and so it's kind of a downtime for them. And then in the new year, we get right back at it. So our guys are in the weight room 5 days a week. And then we practice once a week at an indoor facility nearby. And so that'll take a lot of our time. And then obviously, like you mentioned with Team Ontario, come January, we're going to start up with our tryouts and start down that process. And so it's, sometimes people think when the season's over, it's not as busy, but it's still busy. It gets busy. And then obviously trying to find that next crop of quality student athletes that want to call Laurier home, that ramps up a lot right now as well. And so we're in busy times.
Yeah, I love, again, just the process. Like, you can see just how it's ongoing, right? Your commitment. What I really love is, again, I love how you and the coaching staff have this idea of, like, you're encouraging the athletes to stop, to think, to reflect, to look within as a way so that they can reflect on where they've gone, and then to provide feedback on how you can best help and serve them moving forward, so you can actually help them get to where they want to go. So I just love that commitment and openness to working some of these, soft skills, but just great human being skills.
Yeah. And I think it's important, right? And I've been doing this long enough that, like, if you're going to be successful, ego, everything's got to come out of it, right? And if a student athlete has feedback about, you, or the way you're teaching something, or the way you're approaching a situation, we got to be willing to, as coaches, be open to that feedback, right? And so whether it's a one-off that is something different that needs to be addressed, or if it becomes a common theme, again, we're only successful if our student athletes are successful. And so it's all about them, and that's kind of the approach that we take.
Spoken like a true servant-based leader, lead by example. So I love it. Okay. So I'm curious, I know that there is definitely a student athlete, a parent, someone out there that has definitely been intrigued by the possibilities of, Laurier, Team Ontario. If anyone has any questions or would like to reach out to connect with you, what is the best way people could do that?
Yeah, the easiest way, without kind of flashing, an email on screen, is send me an email. So I often put out, and whatever the audience kind of is, for people interested in Laurier, my email is on our website, laurierathletics.com. For Team Ontario guys, do it. I even have some younger people that aren't even in the recruiting process that just want me to evaluate their film or want to learn a little bit more. I don't profess to be any be all end all, but I do a lot of time with high school coaches who want to do some professional development and stuff like that. So I love to. I think if we're going to continue to grow this beautiful sport, we are, as U Sport coaches, provided the opportunity to do this as a living. And so I think as part of that is an obligation to help try to grow the sport. We have to be willing to give back and share some of the knowledge and experiences that we've gained. And so kind of coaching professional development is a big part of that as well, and making sure that grassroots football is improving as well. And so, yeah, my email on the Laurier Athletics website is probably the easiest way to reach out and get in touch.
Okay. Well, I will definitely share your email in the description section, whether it's on the podcast, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on YouTube. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you, Todd. I want to take a moment to acknowledge you for the man you are, the great husband, the great dad, the great teacher, coach, mentor, but more importantly, the amazing human being you are. I know we've had some great conversations, but I'm even more of a believer in what you do, because you can tell just how deep your passion for developing the whole person, whether it's the student athletes you're around, whether it's the coaches, whether it's just the other important people in your life. So thank you for providing me that reminder, and thank you for just being who you are.
I don't know how to respond to that, but thank you. It is appreciated. I think people kind of ask me that kind of thing, and I think just how much I love it comes out, right? And so I don't think that this is a job you can do if you're not fully passionate about, because it's got wild and wacky hours at times. It's got time away from family at times. And so it has to be something that you're truly passionate about. And I hope, and it sounds like that my love for this sport and developing student athletes kind of comes through in that.
Absolutely, it does. So folks, Coach Galloway dropped so many valuable nuggets of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. But as I remind you every week in the huddle, knowledge is potential power. It's the consistent and focused application of great knowledge that actually creates great results. So my challenge to you is to take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go apply it to your life today. And as I remind you every week in the huddle, you are deserving of greatness. You are worthy of greatness. You are greatness. And my only ask from these conversations is that if it resonated with you, if it touched your heart, then I ask that you share it. Share it with a friend, a teammate, a loved one, someone who you feel needs to hear this message. And the more people we have listening to, learning, understanding, applying these simple principles, the brighter this world will be. As always, I look forward to chatting with you next time in this huddle. Have a blessed rest of your day.